is the legislature doing to make sure the Labor Commissioner's office is actually enforcing the laws that they are required to?
In collaboration with CalMatters, we've been investigating wage theft in California, employers failing to pay workers what they're owed. Our findings led to a national CBS News investigation.
Now, CBS 13 investigative reporter Julie Watts shows us that wage theft data from across the country reveals how much worse the problem is here.
Yeah, our investigation focused on California. CBS News compiled wage theft records from nearly every other state, modeled after the data we compiled here. Now, by comparison, California victims have to wait twice as long for a decision in a wage theft case, and they're less likely to get paid even after they win, revealing just how badly the Department of Labor is failing Californians. Wage theft comes in many forms: unpaid overtime, missed breaks, unreimbursed expenses. In collaboration with CalMatters, we're investigating wage theft in California because even though California has more robust laws than any other state, it appears state regulators may be violating state law and failing the workers who need help the most.
From car wash workers to construction, in-home health care and child care, to retail and restaurants, wage theft is a costly crime in California. The most common victims, low-wage workers, often women, immigrants, and people of color.
So for 17 years, you never got a raise.
Nunca me aumentaron siempre.
This is a photo of Eloisa's kids when she began working at a local Jack in the Box franchise. These are her kids today. Her daughter now drops her off at work because Eloisa still can't afford her own car.
Muy difícil, very hard.
She says she loves her job at Jack in the Box, but after 17 years of loyalty, all while making minimum wage, she says she just learned she was legally entitled to take breaks.
Ahí no nos decían.
Now, wage theft comes in many forms. Maybe an employer asks you to work off the clock, takes your tips, doesn't pay you overtime or for missed breaks. Eloisa estimates her unpaid wage claims over just the past 3 years would be enough to buy her own car. So what is the cost of wage theft? Well, historical claims indicate the average worker lost an annual equivalent of more than 2 months' rent in California, nearly 3 months of childcare in California, and nearly a year's worth of groceries.
Para mí es mucho.
A significant impact for those trying to survive off minimum wage.
Now, there are systems in place to collect unpaid wages. One way is to file a claim with the state. The Division of Labor Standards Enforcement legally has 30 days to schedule a conference with your employer and 120 days to hold a hearing if you can't agree. But according to a CalMatters analysis, last year it took more than twice that long for the cases that actually got a decision, and there were still thousands of 2021 cases pending as of last month. And the data provided by the state was incomplete. The state is literally violating its own law, and no one's holding them accountable.
Yeah, I mean, it's inexcusable.
Assemblymember Ash Kalra is sponsoring legislation intended to better protect restaurant workers. It's the latest in a series of industry-specific wage theft legislation. Other laws include protections for workers in industries ranging from gardeners and janitors to construction workers in the retail industry.
We are passing these laws to protect workers. When the state doesn't follow through, what kind of message does that send to the private employers?
For people like Eloisa,
Frustrante.
accountability can't come soon enough. Neither the state nor her employer responded to our requests for comment.
What would you like to say to our viewers out there who may not even realize they're victims of wage theft?
Tenemos que hablar.
She says speak up and educate yourself, because if you don't, nothing will change. She's still waiting for an initial hearing in her case, but she is optimistic she will eventually get her wages.
Gracias. Thank you.
In collaboration with CalMatters, we've been investigating wage theft in California. Employers essentially stealing money from their workers. Well, now we've learned even after workers win wage theft judgments against their boss, many still don't get paid. Tonight, we're examining a local program that may have a statewide solution.
Growing up in his Mexican hometown, Antonio Dominguez says there were few paved roads, let alone fancy cars.
Como que cumplí ese deseo de estar con carros.
So he says washing cars for a living was sort of a dream realized when he moved to the States. That is, until the car wash he worked at changed ownership. In 2019, the Labor Commissioner's office found the Playa Vista Car Wash failed to properly pay Antonio and 63 others. The state very publicly issued its largest ever wage theft fine against a car wash business. But Playa Vista appealed and is now negotiating a settlement. 3 years later, the workers are still waiting for the money the state says they earned.
Have a good day.
And they're not alone. In addition to large-scale enforcement action by the Labor Commissioner's office, Californians file tens of thousands of individual wage theft claims a year, ranging from stolen tips to minimum wage and overtime violations, mostly impacting low-wage workers, women, immigrants, and people of color.
Muy difícil. Very hard.
For people like Eloisa, a fast food worker just beginning her individual wage claim process, the average judgment of $20,000 could be life-changing. That is, if she can ever collect.
Frustrante.
The problem, while state law requires claimants get a hearing and a decision in their case in under 135 days, a CalMatters data analysis finds it actually takes closer to 500 days, and there are many cases still pending, meaning the Labor Commissioner's office is violating state law. But maybe worse, the data shows 5 years after winning those judgments, only about 1 out of 7 people were actually paid in full. But in contrast, you guys basically have 100% compliance.
That's correct.
Now a pilot program in Santa Clara County may offer a statewide solution.
So essentially, you say pay up or lose your food permit.
That's eventually what happens, yes.
Program manager Jesse Yu explains the Santa Clara County Office of Labor Enforcement began searching the state's list of unpaid wage theft judgments for businesses that sell food in their county, ranging from markets to bakeries to catering companies. Then they threatened to shut them down with one of these until employers paid their outstanding wage theft judgments.
You know, I think some people might wonder, what does wage theft have to do with a food permit?
All food permit holders are required to abide by all local, state, and federal laws and regulations.
And so if they don't pay their workers, they're violating state law.
That's correct.
And while their program is limited to food permits, Yu notes it could theoretically be expanded to any business with a required license or permit.
What might be some of the limitations for other counties to take this on?
I think resources and support.
While San Francisco has a similar program and San Diego is now considering one, not every county has an Office of Labor Enforcement or the money to staff this type of program. Another limitation? By the time the state finally issues a judgment and the county reaches out, some businesses have already shut down or changed ownership.
Santa Clara County is just relaunching its pilot program, which they had to pause amid the pandemic shortly after a successful start. But they say 8 out of the 8 businesses they threatened with one of these either set up a payment plan or paid workers in full within 30 days. Compare that to the Department of Labor's compliance rate. Can we take what Santa Clara County is doing and broaden it statewide?
Absolutely.
Assemblymember Ash Kalra told CBS and CalMatters the state can't rely on counties alone and believes statewide legislation should expand enforcement to include pulling a variety of permits and licenses until all businesses pay their wage theft judgments.
We do have power over the ability of these businesses to operate in our state.
And State Senator Durazo agrees.
We as legislators have to take responsibility for trying to pass laws that have more teeth in them. Now, you know, the reality is that there's a counter influence.
Both pro-labor lawmakers cite pushback from the Chamber of Commerce.
So real talk here, what's it going to take? How long are we talking before we can see a statewide program that really does have penalties for businesses who are not paying these judgments?
Well, let's be realistic. In this building, it's really hard.
You get called job killer by the Chamber of Commerce.
But the Chamber insists they want bad actors held accountable too.
The enforcement really should be focused on the bad actors who are intentionally stealing wages from employees.
Jennifer Barrera, CEO of the California Chamber of Commerce, says the business community also wants to see bad actors held accountable. But in an interview with CBS and our CalMatters reporting partners, Barrera insisted not all wage theft violations are intentional.
We have the most complex labor and employment laws, I would argue, in the country.
And she says those who misinterpret complicated laws should repay employees, but shouldn't be penalized. Although not all wage theft is a mistake, and even after employers are found guilty, the data shows many bosses simply don't pay.
There are mechanisms and tools that the Labor Commissioner has to make sure that those judgments are paid, are enforced.
But it appears the Labor Commissioner can't keep up. Her office denied repeated interview requests from CalMatters and CBS, but in an email said last year they collected $2.8 million in wage claims on behalf of 311 workers. Compare that to the $50.5 million owed on 2,300 judgments from last year alone.
Would you be opposed to some sort of accountability legislation similar to what Santa Clara County is doing statewide?
She says there shouldn't be duplicative enforcement, but if the judgment is final,
The Labor Commissioner has made a decision. The right to appeal that decision has been exhausted, so it's a final judgment. Those should be paid, and we have been very supportive.
Is it something that Cal Chamber would consider drafting and proposing?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's something that we can look into.
but everyone seems to agree new laws would require more resources and more money because the Labor Commissioner's office can't keep up as it is.
Tenemos que hablar.
So for now, tens of thousands continue to wait for the state to enforce the many wage theft laws already on the books.
So real talk here, what's it going to take?
In response to our reporting, Assemblymember Ash Kalra says he's working on new wage theft legislation, and so is State Senator Maria Elena Durazo.
We as legislators have to take responsibility for trying to pass laws that have more teeth in them.
But critics argue California already has more wage theft laws than any other state. The Department of Labor just isn't enforcing them or can't keep up.
What is the legislature doing to make sure the Labor Commissioner's office is actually enforcing the laws that they are required to?
Well, we have to make sure they have the resources.
In the wake of our original reports, the governor's proposed state budget now includes a significant increase of more than $17 million specifically to address the backlog and wait times identified in our report.
Tenemos que hablar.